So thank you everyone for joining. Most of you probably already know me. My name is Ethan Lieber. I'm the CEO of Latchel. And today's topic, we're going to talk about Latchel's new 24/7 home assistant. We worked diligently on this in Q4 last year and have had a really successful launch of it in the new year. A lot of Latchel customers have upgraded to this program, and we have a lot of new folks coming in for this too. So I wanted to share with you what this is and how it could potentially help you turn maintenance into a profit stream. And like I said, I'm not talking about doing markups. This is a new innovative way to create a new profit stream from maintenance by providing amazing service levels and attention to residents. So we're going to dig into that. In the spirit of innovation, I want to start with a quote that we say a lot at Latchel, and that's that you can't get better by staying the same. This actually comes from our leadership principles that we use in the company to guide the way we develop product, the way we manage, and the way employees behave with our customers. The most important leadership principle we have at Latchel is customer obsession, which we're going to dig into a lot during this presentation. But when we say you can't get better by staying the same, we're talking about continuous improvement. It's the second core leadership principle here at Latchel. We want to always be looking at how do we improve our business, how do we share information to help you improve your business, how do we improve our focus on customer obsession, and how do we improve customer experiences. So when we think about you can't get better by staying the same, in my mind, there's one other leadership principle we have that becomes important, and that's because it can stand in the way of improvement. We call this leadership principle ego is the enemy. It was actually based off a book written by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it. The point of ego is the enemy is to say oftentimes when we look at our business and look at the things we've created, we look at these things with a great sense of pride, and that's usually justified. However, we can let our ego get in the way. And when we look at what we've built with pride, say, well, we can't imagine it being any better. I'm at the top of my game. And as soon as you stop looking at your business, your margins, your operations with an eye for improvement, you've essentially lost the battle at that point. And it becomes very difficult to find new ways and innovative things to improve. So take a minute, let you can't get better by staying the same sink in, because we're going to be talking a lot of innovative new things that I hope will help you improve your business. Now, when we talk about leadership principles and continuous improvement, it's wrapped up in a lot in entrepreneurship. And as property managers, you're really the entrepreneurs of real estate. You're dealing with things on so many levels. You're dealing with tenants. You're dealing with third-party vendors. You might have in-house maintenance technicians. You're dealing with owners. You have this huge network you're dealing with, building really business lines along and across all these people you work with. Property management is so people-focused. And property managers have the longest relationships with the properties they're managing and the owners that you work with. In addition to that, because you work so closely with them, it gives you some unique insights that others aren't going to have on the true needs of your owners and the residents. And sometimes this can feel a little bit like a daunting task. A lot of times, especially on the resident side, understanding what residents want and all their desires and their needs can feel overwhelming, because ultimately a lot of the revenue you're likely making is coming from the property owner who's paying the management fee. And oftentimes I think property managers look at the residents and all those desires and needs and wants that the resident has can feel like a burden. And we should be looking at these as opportunities, because really when we look deeper in, these can be opportunities for increasing your revenue. And we're going to talk about how we do that. But ultimately what I want to say here is that property managers who can scale across these different categories and scale to meet these extra needs are going to have the highest opportunity for creating new revenue streams and increasing profit margin. about a month ago, we did a podcast with Tony LeBlanc, who is the author of Doorpreneur. I forget what the subtitle of the book is. The main title is Doorpreneur. And the book is essentially about really entering that entrepreneurial mindset as a property manager to create revenue streams across categories. Tony's a really interesting guy. He's an author of Doorpreneur. He runs a very successful property management company in Canada on the eastern side. And one of the interesting pieces of research he did in the book is he found that the average profit margin for a management company is 6%. That was shocking to him. It's also shocking to me, but that's a very low margin. And one of the reasons he found that was the average is most property managers aren't taking advantage of these other opportunities that present themselves. Tony himself, he boasts that his margin is upwards of 20%, which is incredible, especially for property management being a tight margin business. You now have these new pressures on your margin. There's always new legislation that's very tenant friendly that kind of puts pressure on your margin. Residents have much higher and higher expectations. Maybe we can blame Amazon for that, getting us used to 2-hour delivery. And speaking of Amazon, I do want to say a lot of the leadership principles we discuss in this, they're actually pulled from Amazon, with Amazon's main focus being customer obsession. And that's kind of what inspired them to even create 2-hour delivery. I know 2-day delivery is more common across the US. But point of this is to say we should be looking at this stuff as opportunity. That's how Tony sees it. That's how he's achieved the margin he has. So I want to segue to reference Buildium's State of the Industry Report for 2020, because we're going to spend a lot of this slide share digging into what the resident wants and how to create opportunities from resident needs. All right, so I'm just going to read this quote. A lot of folks that are listening to this can't actually see the screen. So if you are watching, I apologize for just repeating what's on the slide. But I'm doing this for the benefit of people that don't have the video and might be listening in. So I'm just going to read the quote from the Buildium Industry Report. Today, attracting and retaining residents is less about the flashy appeal of pools and granite countertops and more about displaying that their needs have been taken into consideration in the place they call home. Whether they rent out of necessity or preference, today's hyper-connected, often stressed residents are searching for amenities that provide convenience, comfort, and connection. So there's a couple things I want to stress here, and that's that residents are looking for amenities that provide high value add service above and beyond typical expectation for a rental. Now, the key point here is that when we say amenity, these are things residents are very likely willing to pay more for because it's what they want in a rental. And that's going to become key for this presentation. And it becomes key in understanding how that can be leveraged to create new margin for you. So let's dig into what tenants are looking for. How do we meet their needs? What do they really want? You probably already know this stuff, but I'm going to go through it. It might sound basic, but it ultimately, the needs and wants of the renter are at a pretty fundamental level. And that's that we know renters want higher response times. They want it for maintenance calls. They want the general increase in customer service level. But for the resident, it's about being able to get a hold of someone for any in-home need they might have. A lot of that stuff will be maintenance. Some of it might just be general questions, and some of it might be as basic as just troubleshooting around the home that they need help with. Now, I think it's important to note here, while software is absolutely essential at helping run a business and keep guardrails on the service experience, software isn't enough. People want that heart-to-heart. They want the human-to-human interaction. Remember that Buildium report. Connectivity was one of the essential things renters look for. They need that human-to-human interaction. And the reason I want to point this out, and I'm spending so much time on this, is that the entire way Latchel has built the 24/7 Home Assistant, there's a lot of software involved. But on top of all that software and workflow automation are the people. that we provide this layer of humans that act as the home assistant. Because when a tenant calls and they don't want to use a portal, it's important to have that person on the phone with them. That's where that trust and empathy can kind of be delivered and built. A computer can't empathize with the tenant, but a person can. A person can show that we're hearing the tenant and that we care. So I'm going to talk more about the Buildium report because there's two stats that they found that are going to sound daunting. They're going to sound very overwhelming as a property manager, and you're probably going to be thinking, like, how am I supposed to be doing that while doing everything else I'm supposed to do? But again, I want to reframe this. Think about this as an opportunity, because it's an opportunity to increase margin by providing a value-add service. We'll talk later about how Home Assistant kind of addresses this. So the first stat, 72% of renters feel that it's very important that their property manager is easy to get a hold of and resolves issues quickly. So there's a couple of elements in here. When we talk about easy to get a hold of, it really means meeting the tenant or that renter where they want to be met. And that could be over the phone, picking up the phone to talk to the tenant when they call you. It could mean responding to a text if that tenant prefers text messaging or email, or having the web portal available to them. A lot of tenants will prefer to use a web portal, and then you just need to be there to see what comes in to address and get on the phone with them if needed, right? All right, second stat, 60% of renters say it's very important to them that their property manager provides great customer service and keeps things running smoothly. Now, I'm sure none of this is a surprise, but when you add these things together, it does feel daunting. 72% want you to be immediately available to talk to them, resolve issues quickly over the phone, tell them what they need to hear. And then 60% are wanting you to also do all that, like customer service follow-up. When we talk about tenants wanting to see things running smoothly, that's tied right into transparency. If I can't see things running smoothly, I'm going to assume there's just chaos in the background. And that's where the proactive communication becomes really important. And it's hard, right? It's hard to proactively communicate the status on a work order that a tenant might have put in. It's hard to proactively reach out to a tenant to just see if there's any maintenance issues. And I'm talking a lot about maintenance, but it goes beyond maintenance. Reaching out to just make sure there's stay. I say stay as if they're a guest, that they might be a long-term renter, but are they actually enjoying the experience renting from you? Do they have any feedback for you? Right? It's that proactive communication that really builds that trust and empathy that we talked about. And I don't have to tell you this, but I know you already know the main reason a renter is going to leave a unit and not retain is because their issues aren't addressed timely or respectfully. All right, so let's go dig more into that renter mindset and talk about what we need to be creating opportunity here. And to do that, I think that the point of this is first to acknowledge that residents are willing to pay for extra high level of service, right? They're willing to pay more for it. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but on the 24/7 Home Assistant benefit that Latchel packages for you, we have a 95% opt-in rate. That means 95% of tenants are choosing to pay more to get an extra high level of service. That might be surprising, but it's true. Point of this, the point of all this research that I just showed you, is that we need to acknowledge before we can capture this opportunity that yes, in fact, residents are willing to pay extra for higher levels of service. Okay, so what is a resident benefit? I've kind of talked about this as we went through. You might already know this. You might in fact already have a resident benefit package that offers some like extra things that the resident pays for. Essentially, a resident benefit package is when you have value-added extras for a tenant that the tenant pays extra for that aren't a part of the rent. And the reason this works is because they're not typically expected when renting a unit. Like a 60-second pickup time, 24/7 when a tenant calls, that's not typical expectation when renting a property. It might be what tenants want, but it's certainly not typical expectation. So these types of things can be packaged in a resident benefit. Multifamily organizations have been doing this for years now. Greystar, Equity Residential, Avenue 5. I'm going to give you an example from, I lived in a Equity Residential building in Menlo Park. And when Latchel was going through Y Combinator, that's when I had a short-term stay in this large multifamily complex. Some of the resident amenities they had that I had to pay extra for, and in some cases they're mandatory. Like in my case, these were mandatory when I lived in this unit. In other cases, they can be optional. But I had a mandatory garbage valet fee. It was $30 a month for someone to come up to my doorstep and take the garbage down to the trash can. So I paid $30 a month to not walk 2 flights of stairs, basically. I probably wouldn't have chosen to do that if I had the option, but in this case, it was mandatory. And of course, being mandatory, I used it. It was nice. Saved myself a few calories, a few steps. Other cases that you might actually be very familiar with are HVAC filters. Second Nature is a great company that provides this benefit to residents. And I know in a lot of cases, they're optional. Other ones that you might be familiar with, Citizen Home Solutions, SureVestor. All these things packaged as resident benefits because the resident's willing to pay for that service. So let's dig into what kind of foundationally makes this work. I've already kind of alluded to this, but really it comes down to customer obsession being at the core of these benefit packages. You have to be customer obsessed and really truly have substantial benefit for that resident. Like in Latchel's case for the home assistant, it's 60-second or less pickup times. Like that's a meaningful thing. Most people aren't going to be able to pick up in 60 seconds. You're going to have wait times. Think of softwares you're using if they have like contact centers. Like I've heard of wait times up to 45 minutes for those. Like that's not a benefit. Waiting 45 minutes for someone to pick up is not a benefit. Having to leave a voicemail, wait half an hour for a callback, that's not a benefit, right? But 60 seconds to have someone on the phone helping you would be. And that's why Latchel, with our home assistant program, we've maintained a 4.7 out of 5 star rating for tenant satisfaction, because we really care about picking up the phone and actually delivering that service level. Of course, like we do all this proactive SMS and like make scheduling more convenient, and that's part of it too. But it goes beyond just that software component. It's about having the team that really cares and wants to do their best for that resident. I'm going to just call out some of the customer reviews we've had just in the last week with the Home Assistant product. These were all 5-star reviews. I'm going to read them off because not everyone has access to the video. And there's a common theme here that I want to point out. So great communication from Latchel, great experience, easily done. Maintenance request was easy and helpful. Great communication, fast service. So there's a common thread here, and the common thread is actually something you won't see. And that's that the positive reviews are rarely about how fast the maintenance issue was completed, if it was maintenance. And not all this stuff was maintenance. Some of it was just help that was requested for troubleshooting. But notice that tenants aren't talking about how fast the maintenance was actually taken care of. What they're talking about is how responsive the team is, their home assistant was, how convenient the home assistant made it in scheduling things, and how proactive the home assistant was in working with them. Because when it comes down to it, what tenants really want is that show of consideration and respect. And that actually becomes a lot more important than, hey, get this fixed tomorrow. Most times they're willing to wait to get non-emergencies fixed, as long as you're respectful, considerate, and helping them get this done in the most convenient way to them possible. Now, if you wait like a month to get something fixed, okay, you're probably not getting a positive review no matter how proactive you were. So it is important to have, a reasonable service level around fixing the thing. That's why it's helpful to have preferred vendors that you love and work with you. But by and large, if a tenant has to wait 5 days, that's not a big problem. What they really want is that consideration and proactiveness in the process. Okay, so let's talk about what the resident actually gets on 24/7 Home Assistant. I hope I've at least sort of like convinced you of the value here to the tenants. So let's dig into some specifics. Really what Latchel's 24/7 Home Assistant does is create a luxury living experience at a very affordable cost. Cost to the tenant, it's probably cheaper than any other benefit package you've seen. We understand at Latchel, tenants are going to care about 3 things in any request process, whether it's for just troubleshooting help or actually getting a repair done. And that's it. They want it to be convenient, They want it to be transparent so they know what's happening, and they want it to be affordable to them, right? No one wants to pay $100 on top of rent for a service level benefit, but they are willing to pay for it. And we'll get into the actual cost on the next slide here. So what do they get with this? Well, I've mentioned 60-second hold times or less. Actually, our median hold time is 4 seconds. Instant responses to SMS, really convenient scheduling, proactive communication around appointment reminders. We do proactive communication on like work order follow-ups. And what's key here, I think, and it becomes a benefit for you, is feedback responses, that when we're actually following up to make sure that the tenant got taken care of for that issue they called in about, that's when they can actually rate the experience. That's where we get that 4.7 out of 5 stars. And whenever we do get positive reviews, we actually repackage that and have the tenant post it on your social pages. So it's a nice benefit for you as the property manager. They get a couple other benefits with the home assistant. We call one security deposit protection, where Latchel essentially acts as an independent party to review security deposit deductions. So when a tenant moves out, they get their deductions. They can say, hey, Latchel, can you review this? And Latchel will tell them why everything got deducted. Because the home assistant takes a lot of the maintenance requests from them, it's really easy for the home assistant to cross-reference, explain why things are being deducted. If the home assistant, let's say, goes through that review, though, and does notice a discrepancy or a potential gray area, this is where it becomes a nice benefit for you. The Latchel team will actually get in touch with you as the property manager and say, hey, like, we noticed this deduction. Why is this here? And then you can tell us, oh, this is why, and we'll go convey that to the tenant, be that first point of contact to them. We have cases, though, where a property manager says, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have added that. That was my mistake. So it's kind of a nice check for you and a review for you, so you don't end up with any kind of like fines or anything out of small claims. Really great for the tenant, though, because then they have the confidence and trust, in independent parties there. There's no misaligned incentives. We have customers, too, that even talk about this on listings to list or lease units faster. We also provide some no-show fee protection, though, because the home assistant's so proactive. We do an effective job canceling any maintenance appointments. So if the tenant says, hey, I can't make this time, we're really good at communicating that to vendors. But in cases where the vendor, let's say, did show up and charge a trip fee, Latchel would reimburse the tenant for that cost, which is a nice benefit for them, because a lot of tenants have been hit with trip charges, even though they tried canceling appointments, things like that. So a lot of cool benefits for them. I'm not going to go over every minutia, but these are just some of the big ones that tenants love. So how does it work for the residents? They pay a monthly fee of only $8.99, and then if they want to add extra adult residents in the unit, it's an extra $4.99 for additional adults. So the primary resident in the unit pays $8.99, extra adults pay $4.99, and that usually this cost gets split. And most often, either an entire unit will opt out, so no one does it, or the entire unit opts in. That's the most common, but there are sometimes cases in student housing where a couple will opt out to help just bring down the cost for the whole home. Latchel provides all the offer letters explaining the benefits of home assistant and all the welcome texts and emails that go out. So Latchel handles all of that for you. You don't have to worry about that. We make this as plug and play as possible for you so that you can easily plug this resident benefit into your process. And then just like with Latchel's traditional services, we have a dedicated phone number for the home assistant that the residents can call, or they can call your main office and then you can forward the call to that line. They can also text that line. Text is, everyone loves texting. It's super simple, super easy, or they can use any of the web portals Latchel gives them access to. And now let's finish this off by talking about why this is so awesome for you and where the profit comes in for you as the property manager. So we work with you to build this as a resident benefit package into your business to create a new profit stream and allow you to never take a maintenance call again. So how does that all work? Well, we expect when you're on this program that you will increase your profits by $440 per month for every 100 units. Now, some companies get as high as $650 or $700 per month for every 100 units. On the next slide, I'll explain why, but $440 is the low end of what you should expect for every 100 units. So if you're a 1,000 unit company, Imagine adding 4,400 new dollars in profit every month. What would that be if you annualize it? It's going to be over $50,000 a year in new profits. At 100 units, 440 per month, you're talking about $5,000 a year in new profits, right? What would you do with that money? Would you hire a BDM? Would you spend more on marketing? Maybe you'd invest in like more meetings or services to the owners. There's probably a lot you could do. We also decrease the time you spend on maintenance by 80%. 80% sort of like a rule of thumb ballpark that we come up with. Really what we're taking over is all the tenant-facing communication and then kind of the more simple in-out maintenance type work. You don't have to handle that anymore. Latchel handles that. We'll work with your preferred vendors. If you don't have preferred vendors, Latchel has a network that we can leverage as well to save you time. And then, of course, it's about improving tenant happiness. Now, imagine getting more 5-star reviews on your social media pages every week. How would that help your business? Imagine it. You have all these 5-star reviews now. Maybe that helps lease units faster. Maybe more owners are taking a look at you. You have all this extra time, or your team has extra time because the maintenance load is reduced. What are they working on? Maybe faster unit turns, maybe renovations, value-added projects on units. Then you have this extra profit stream, $440 for every 100 units. How do you use that? Maybe you just have to think about that. Okay, now let's dig into the specifics. How do you actually profit? Well, you earn $2 per resident every month. So out of those fees for the benefit package, $2 goes to you for every resident on Home Assistant. So think about how many residents you have, multiply that by $2. That's your actual monthly profit. The national average is 2.2 adult occupants per unit. So we use that as like an average metric. If you're in a lot of single family, that might actually be higher. If you're in a lot of like multifamily studios, 1 bedrooms, you might be averaging that 2.2, or it might even be closer to 2 or 1.8. So just something to think about. $2 for every resident every month in new profit. Now we also have a program where you earn 3% cash back on maintenance invoices. So all the maintenance invoices that are processed on Latchel's platform, we give you 3% as cash back. This is not a markup. If the invoice is $100, the invoice is $100. But after the payment processes, Latchel's going to take $3 out of that 100, pass it to you as additional profit. So think about how much maintenance volume you have every month. Imagine 3% of that is cash back. Again, this isn't markup. It's just like a credit card program, 3% cash back. All right, so that's your profit stream. And that 3% is why sometimes companies will have closer to $650 or $700 in profit every month for 100 units. And then let's talk about how you free up time. Well, I've already mentioned this, but Latchel handles all that tenant-facing communication, right? We're their home assistant. We help them with all the in-home issues, and maintenance is one of the biggest things that we're going to ever help them with. Because we're helping them with maintenance, we're going to take their availability. We'll work with your preferred vendors to pick the time that works for them. We're going to do that follow-up, and you're only going to get involved when you need to be. So maybe your preferred vendors aren't responding to Latchel and we need your help. Maybe there's budget approvals, obviously. We're going to need your help. We're not the executive decision makers here. Maintenance is in your hands. You're still controlling it. Latchel's that augmentation as the home assistant, though. So we're working hand in hand with you. All right, so let's take a step back. I may have rambled too much here. I hope I didn't lose anyone. So we're going to finish off with that exercise one more time. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And now imagine this. You have a new profit stream next month. It's $440 per month for every 100 units. So think about how many units you have. If you have 200 units, $880 per month in profit. If you're at 300 units, it's like $1,320 per month in profit, right? Okay. Now imagine you have that new profit next month. Now on top of that, I want you to imagine that you freed up 80% of the time that you normally spend on tenant-facing maintenance. Okay, what are you doing with that free time? All right, next, I want you to imagine you're seeing more consistent 5-star reviews from tenants hitting your social media pages. Okay, Okay, now imagine these three things together. What does your business look like next month? Imagine this is stacking up. Now, what does it look like 6 months from now? Have you been able to grow your company faster? Have you maybe stabilized it to a point where you can envision creating more scale? Maybe it's just made your lifestyle better and you're running a happier, more successful business. Okay, I want you to leave with that image in your head, and maybe you need to think about that some more, but I don't want to leave you hanging. I want to tell you how easy it is to get started with this program. It's very plug and play. The hardest part is actually just aligning on maintenance configurations. So we typically have a 5-day implementation timeline where day one, we're going to sync systems. So we have your property data, resident data, all that good stuff that you normally expect. Generally, we're going to spend 2 to 4 days making sure we get all the configurations done right. And this is where most of your time is required. If you have a lot of units, a lot of portfolios, a lot of special instructions, it could take 2 to 3 hours of your time. If you have a pretty simple setup, it might only take 45 minutes. We'll prioritize your vendors, your property rules, set up budget limits, all that good stuff. We do exactly what you tell us. And this 2 to 4 days is for you to tell us how everything should work. And on day 5, you're ready to go. Latchel's very plug and play around all the offer letters and lease addendums and everything that you're going to ever use. And day 5, you're up and running, ready to go. It's a pretty simple process. I hope that doesn't scare you away. We would love to talk to you more about how this could work for you. There's a learn more button in this Crowdcast session that you can actually click to just schedule a meeting to talk with us more in depth. You might have questions. We can go through those one-to-one. And yeah, until you set up that meeting, I want you to think, what could you do with a year of increased profits and free time? You could probably do a lot. You could probably do more than I could even imagine you doing. Yeah, think about it. And we would love to go more in depth with you one-on-one to see how this could work for you. So I'm going to end the screen share at this point.